Former two-time world champion Amir King Khan weighs in with his thoughts on the fight between Conor Benn and Samuel Vargas this Saturday at Wembley Arena. We're going to talk about his thoughts on what he had to say on that fight in this video. Welcome back to the channel, people. Of course, as always, it's your boy Budge, and you're now tuned in to Talk to Budge. Please wipe your feet before you come in. You're more than welcome to the channel, but you've got to wipe your feet first. And what by that I mean, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you sign up to all notifications, so whenever I drop a video, which is going to be daily, you're always the first to find out about it. And I want to hear from you. In the comments, with the topic that we're discussing in this video, share your thoughts. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you have a different opinion? I want to hear from you. I'm speaking for however long I'm going to speak in this video, but I want it to be a dialogue. I want to hear back from you. I want to know what you think and how you feel on the topics that we discuss in these videos. So please, help me build this channel from the ground up. Of course, we're starting from scratch. So help me through your subscribing to the channel and sharing the content with your friends and your family and your WhatsApp group chats and all the rest of it. But also, I need your engagement. I need you to like. I need you to leave a comment. I need you to share your thoughts on this as well. Now, the reason why I wanted to do this video is because I always find it very interesting how these boxers can so frequently and so often come back from the brink of obscurity, you know. And of course, the person in question here is Amir King Khan, who was doing an interview with Sky Sports and was giving his views on the up-and-coming fight this Saturday between Conor Benn, who is, of course, a welterweight contender, against a veteran welterweight in Samuel Vargas. And Amir Khan was basically asked his thoughts on that particular fight. Samuel Vargas, of course, is an opponent that he has been in the ring with after a long layoff off the back of his loss to Canelo. He then fought in his comeback fight. He fought against Phil Greco, and then he followed up with a fight against Samuel Vargas. So he's been in the ring with Samuel Vargas, and it makes sense to ask his view on that potential fight, which is exactly what Sky Sports done. But I find it very interesting, like I said, about the whole these boxers coming back from the brink of obscurity, because we haven't heard from this guy. We haven't heard from Amir Khan in such a long time. He's been out of the ring for near enough 2 years. The last fight that he had was against Billy Dib out in Saudi Arabia, which he won via TKO in the 4th round. And that was in July of 2019. And prior to that, of course, he was in the ring with Terence Crawford in April of 2019. And that was a very controversial, dubious end to the fight. You know, we remember that he stated that, you know, he got hit by a low blow and Terence Crawford's shot to the body, which looked okay to me. It looked like it was on the sort of the belt line. You know, he pulled out of that fight basically after that. And again, it's obviously very dubious. It's very controversial. There's different opinions on it. I, for one, think that it was an opportunity for him to, you know, basically get out of that fight nice and easy. Because of the fact that it's a controversial end to it. He still can potentially try and angle for more fights when he comes back, and still that potential fight against Kell Brook is still on the table. I think if he had continued in that fight, he probably would have been stopped a lot worse versus Terence Crawford, and that harms his chances of that Kell Brook fight far worse than if he just got out of that fight because of the whole low blow situation and so on and so forth. But anyway, he's been out the ring for almost 2 years, and I just find it interesting that now we're seeing him pop up everywhere. We're seeing him come back. He's doing interviews here, there, and everywhere. His face is more prominent, since this year. He's recently got a reality show with his wife called Meet the Khans on BBC iPlayer. We saw him earlier on this year making an appearance on Friday Night Feast with Jamie Oliver. And of course, he also recently done an interview talking about the fact that him and his representatives have reached out to Kell Brook about a potential fight. Obviously, this is something that we've been hearing about for years. It's been a painful one. Another similar situation to the whole Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao thing, where it's like the fight is 6 or 7 years past their primes, We've been hearing about this potential fight since like 2014. And all now, we still haven't seen this fight happen. There's been back and forths and he said, she said, and this person's ducking and this person doesn't want the smoke and all the rest of it. For whatever reason, that fight hasn't happened. And the fans have lost out on a potentially great fight. And I think obviously now, whilst there always will be some degree of interest in that fight, of course, both those fighters are now past their best. They're not going to be fighting in their primes. And I think ultimately it is just a big, the final last big payday for both of those fighters, ultimately, when they eventually do fight, which I do believe it will eventually happen. But of course, it's not going to be what it could have been ultimately. Now, in relation to the fight between Conor Benn and Samuel Vargas, what Khan said to Sky Sports, and I quote, he says that Vargas can get in there and have a little tear up. He can throw a good shot as well. He's got decent power. I think it's a massive step up for Conor Benn, and I think Conor Benn will have his hands full in that fight. Since obviously after he fought me, Samuel Vargas that is, he has been in 1 or 2 difficult fights. Samuel Vargas, and he's been beat after I beat him. But I still think he's a dangerous operator. You have to stay focused throughout the whole fight because this is boxing. One punch can change a fight. Samuel has that power, has decent skills, which can cause any fighter problems. Now, going into this fight, Samuel Vargas has a 31-6 record. He's got 14 wins by way of knockout, but there's no doubt that he has got the better resume and has been in the ring with the better opposition. He's been in the ring with Virgil Ortiz Jr. He's been in the ring with Luis Collazo, Amir Khan, Danny Garcia, Errol Spence. And in terms of his record, he's only got, although he has 3 losses, he's only been stopped by 3 opponents. And though his first loss came at the hands of Errol Spence, who we know, of course, is the king of the welterweight division at the moment. He's sitting right at the top of the totem pole. He's a devastating body puncher. So there's no shame in losing by stoppage to Errol Spence because he is a pressure fighter that knows how to break you down. Danny Garcia was the second guy that stopped him. And of course, we know about Danny Garcia's heavy hands, his Philly bricks, that Keith Thurman mentioned after their fight and said that, he is very, very heavy-handed. And we've seen him stop a lot of guys too. And of course, Virgil Ortiz, again, who is a absolutely destructive puncher and who we've seen absolutely destroy guys, man. He is a guy who is a absolute wrecking ball. So you can see that the only guys that have stopped Samuel Vargas are absolutely destructive fighters with heavy hands, ultimately. So he's only got 3 losses on his resume, but he's been in with very, very top opposition. Even in that fight against Amir Khan, we saw, ultimately Amir Khan won, but we saw Samuel Vargas drop Amir Khan in that fight. And hurt him on a number of occasions in that fight, particularly late on. So he is a wily old veteran. He's a guy that knows how to survive. He's been in there with big punches. So it is definitely a step up for Conor Benn and an opponent that is really going to give him a lot of trouble. I definitely agree with Amir Khan in that in that respect. When you look at Conor Benn's resume, he comes into this fight 17-0 with 11 wins coming by way of knockout. And his biggest opponent to date, or his biggest step up, was in his previous fight against Sebastian Formella. But you could argue that Formella fight, even though it was a step up in opposition for Conor Benn, it wasn't necessarily a huge step up because of the fact that we didn't really know about Sebastian Formella until his fight prior to the Conor Benn fight, where he fought, oh gosh, who did he fight? Sean Porter. And he went the distance with Sean Porter. And that was basically the first time we'd heard about Sebastian Formella. So after that fight, that him going the distance with Porter, he then jumps in a ring with Conor Benn. And so for that reason, we're saying that it was a step up for Conor Benn, because obviously because Formella had gone the 12 rounds with Porter. But in terms of stellar opposition, prior to Porter, Sebastian Formella hadn't really mixed it at elite world level. So of course, on one hand, we can say that it is a step up for Conor Benn, but this fight against Samuel Vargas undoubtedly is a proper step up for Conor Benn, because of the fact that this guy has been in there with very, very top names, big punchers, heavy hitters, people that have a lot of stoppages on their records. So it is a huge step up for Conor Benn, but I think certainly one that we need to see. I think it's certainly in my view, Conor Benn is a boxer that's come on leaps and bounds. In his last few fights, I've really seen him develop quite considerably, and I think the how he's come along is very, very impressive. Over the short space of time that he has improved. I think his boxing ability, his IQ, his skill, has improved quite a bit. The fact that he's not getting hit as much as he was getting hit in previous fights has improved too. His conditioning and the fact that he's remaining fresh in the later rounds of the fight as well now is a huge improvement. I think all round his game has improved, man. So it is time for us to see these step ups. Of course, there's other fights that we're calling for in terms of him stepping up. There has been a lot of clamour around that potential fight with Josh Kelly. I don't know now how much appetite there still is for that fight because of the fact that Josh Kelly lost to David Avanesian. Maybe there's going to be more of an interest. If he can come through this fight against Samuel Vargas, maybe there's going to be more interest between a potential fight with David Avanesian. Maybe that's a potential angle. But ultimately, this is a huge step up for Conor Benn, and one that I expect to see him come through, because I think, he should have enough to beat Samuel Vargas, but I think it's going to be very, very difficult for him. I don't expect him to get the stoppage, if I'm being completely honest. I think if he does get the stoppage, it's going to be a late one. But ultimately, I want to see him come through this fight, put on a great performance, win the fight, and then, continue to fight opposition at this level, and continue to push on, man, for bigger and better. I think it's about that time now for him to start stepping up, and I'm glad to see that he is getting now matched with these kind of caliber of fighters. But what happens, we have to, it remains to be seen. We have to wait until Saturday, ultimately. Sky Sports also did ask Amir Khan whether he felt that Conor Benn could be a world champion, and he said absolutely, he could definitely be a future world champion. He just got to stay grounded, keep working hard, stay committed to his craft, and nothing is going to stop him. That, of course, is another debate for another day, because I think certainly at this point in time, the welterweight division and landscape is a very interesting one. Whilst you have the guys right at the top of their games in Errol Spence, in Terence Crawford, in Sean Porter, you've also got guys that are coming up that are absolutely dangerous. I've already mentioned Virgil Ortiz, who looks to be a real problem. He's only young, but he is really clearing aside a lot of his opposition. And you also have Jaron Boots Ennis, who I don't think there is enough noise being made about. This guy is one to watch for the future. I'm telling you, this guy is an absolute beast. Not only is he a destructive puncher, but he's very skillful, got great IQ, can switch it up. And I think we're going to see him also really rise to the cream of the crop at the welterweight division. Of course, he's going to be fighting against Sergey Lipinets in his first real big step up on April 10th as well. And I can't wait to see that fight. I think he's going to win, and he's going to win in style and fashion, ultimately. But yeah, the landscape of 147 is really, really hotting up. You've got a lot of young prospects and contenders coming through. And I think, you know, we're going to see some real good fights over the next few years when these guys all mix it up. But again, you know, for Conor Benn to be in that conversation and in and amongst those names, he's got to come through this test, this step up on Saturday, which I expect him to. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think that Samuel Vargas is going to have a little too much experience for Conor Benn in that fight? Do you think he's going to be a little too experienced, a little too wily, a little too clever? Or do you think Conor Benn has enough to see this one through and get the win? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. We're going to leave it there. Reminder, make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit it. Hit the like button. Sign up for all the notifications and share this around with your boxing friends. Until the next video, we're gonna leave it there. Budge, over and out.